The public has a long-held fascination with detectives. Detectives see a side of life the average person is never exposed to. In this podcast series, I Catch Killers with Gary Jubilant, I'll be interviewing a whole range of people you come across as a detective, including police, bad guys and victims. I spent 34 years as a cop. For 25 of those years I was catching killers. That's what I did for a living. I was a homicide detective. I'm no longer just interviewing bad guys. Instead, I'm taking the public into the world in which I operated. The guests I selected have amazing stories from all sides of the law. The interviews are raw and honest, just like the world they inhabited. No one who steps into the world of crime comes out unchanged. Join me now while I take you into this world. This episode of I Catch Killers contains conversations that some listeners may find confronting or triggering. Discretion is advised. Welcome back to part 2 of I Catch Killers with Charlie Staunton, a former New South Wales police officer who found himself on the wrong side of the law. Charlie is now going to talk us through how he got caught up with an international drug cartel, why criminal groups trusted him with over $23 million cash, how he did time and survived in one of Canada's toughest prisons. Also, I'm not going to let Charlie go without asking him what it's like to get on the drink with rock star Joe Cocker, why he was on a double date with Madonna, and why he was drinking at Guy Ritchie's hotel. This should be interesting. Charlie, how did you get into international smuggling?
Well, sometimes I question myself as to that, but it was just a process that one thing led to another, led to another, led to another.
So how long did, sorry, and my fault, but how long did you do in New South Wales prison before they released you?
A year.
And was that because you spoke or because that was all they could hold you for?
Well, they'd asked me that were irrelevant, really, but I just said no, I refused to answer, because I just wanted to, straight from the get-go, I wanted to, apart from my name, the rest was nothing. But these 17 questions, and then Justice Wood turned around and said, well, he's obviously not answering any questions, that's it, you're in contempt, and sent me across to the Supreme Court to be sentenced. So that was, I went from there, from the Royal Commission, straight across the road to the Supreme Court, where they sentenced me to an indefinite sentence until I answered the questions. Then after a year, it'd be just, to say it's boring in prison is the understatement of all time. And I had a family, albeit that Kim and I had split up, my wife. But I still had the 2 boys, and it was just boring. And
how old were the boys at the time?
16 and 10.
Yeah.
And they needed their dad around. Anyway, so I rang the Royal Commission and said, I wanted to purge my contempt. And so I went and answered the 17 questions, and it was nothing. And then they had to adjourn then because they had one of their secret witnesses in there at the time, and they weren't going to interrupt his evidence because he was in the witness protection program. And so I answered the 17 questions, which were nothing questions, and then they believed that I was going to answer further questions at a later date. So they sent me back across to the Supreme Court to be sentenced then for the actual contempt. And Justice Dunford, in his wisdom, decided, well, you're going to have an extra month now. So they gave me an extra month. And so when I got released after that month, my sister was in Bali at the time. And I thought, I've got to get out of the jurisdiction. Because if you're outside the jurisdiction, you couldn't be resubpoenaed. So I gathered by that time that my phone was still being tapped. And so I would talk to people and said, well, I'm just going to go up to Bali for a week and see my sister just to get away from all this publicity and everything. And so I'm sure they believed that I was coming back the next week. I had the return ticket for a week. And of course I had no intention of coming back. So I just stayed there, and I wasn't coming back until the Royal Commission finished. And when I was up there, I got a phone call from an old client who owed me some money for fees and said, I can't pay it all, but I'll send you some money now. And he sent me 10,000. So my girlfriend and he said, come to Amsterdam. And I thought, well, Bali wasn't really doing it for me. So I thought, well, let's go to Europe, and I had lots of relatives in England and around Europe. And I thought, well, that'll do. And I was broke again, so I had to find somewhere where I could work, and you couldn't work in Bali. So I thought, I'll go to England. Perhaps I'll work over here. So I came here to London and then went to Amsterdam. And when I got there and I met this guy, he paid me some more of the money that he owed me. And he said, oh, I might have a job for you. And I said to him, what? He said, come with me. And he took me and introduced me to these two Dutch guys. And they'd heard about the Royal Commission. And evidently, the camera that they had where they caught Trevor Haken in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the police forces were going to use that all around the world then, because it was, how you see in the traditional, pat the person down to see if he's wearing a wire.
Yeah.
It didn't dawn on anyone that, you could have one in the car.
Right.
And so, in the criminal world, that sort of got quite a bit of notoriety.
Changed the landscape to a degree.
Yeah, something like that. And then they said, oh, we've called you Prince Charles. You're the Prince. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, well, you're Charles and it's the Royal Commission, so we've called you Prince Charles.
Is that how you got your nickname?
Yeah, it was a bit of a boring sort of a non-entity joke, but anyway, so I was known as the Prince. And anyway, then they said, well, here's the deal. We've got 25 tons of hash in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and we want you to be in charge of getting it to Canada. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, I've never seen a piece of hash in my life.
Yeah.
And I literally had never seen a piece of hash in my life. I'd seen plenty of weed and that around, but I'd never seen any hash, and I didn't know that it was in Australia.
Yeah.
But evidently it was, but it was just unbeknownst to me. And I said, and they said, it's just a project management job, and what we want you to do is facilitate all the payments, and it's all around the world because there's international connections and the like. And you're a man of your word, and we trust you, and away you go. And I said, well, what's it worth to me? And they said, well, this is probably a 2 or 3 year job, but it'd be worth 20, 30 million to you.
A lot of money, Charlie.
And I went, and I was broke, and I couldn't go back to Australia, and I was annoyed at this, at the government, at the people that were in power, and I guess. I don't know. Did I want to be bad? But the job, I didn't have a problem. I didn't have a problem with marijuana.
Can we just dissect it a little bit? You spent 12 months in prison. You'd been a cop. Then you'd been around King's Cross, Mr. Fix-It. So I would imagine you see and had seen things around there. 12 months in prison. When you came out in New South Wales, were you a changed person? Like when you said you were annoyed, was it almost like, well, this is who I am now? Did it change your identity?
Well, there was a twofold aspect, because there was people that thought I was a criminal, and there was people that thought he's not a bad bloke, and I've never regarded myself as a criminal. I'm sort of, I guess I've always thought of myself as a policeman. But when I saw the people that were in power, they were bullying people. I mean, I think the Royal Commission was just a bully. Mm. You have the right to remain silent. You sent me to jail just because I wouldn't tell you what you didn't have and you knew everything anyway, but you just wanted to show, and you wanted to put the fear of God into people. Oh, everyone's going to talk. Everyone's going to talk.
Yeah.
And I was angry in myself. I was angry, and yeah, had I have been in better circumstances, I might have made different decisions. But I wasn't. I guess I was sort of on the run.
Yeah.
And survival sort of kicks in, and all right, these people were criminals. They're in a criminal organisation, but they had a moral standing. There was never any violence.
Mm.
Um, if it came to a robbery, someone robbed them or did this. It was just a bad business decision. It wasn't. They weren't going out shooting each other like they do in other drug worlds, and the misnomer that people have that everything is violent with regards to it.
Yeah.
These were businessmen who had the same moral compass as myself, and very generous people who looked after their society. And people say it's against the law. Well, it is against the law, and the irony is now that both America and Canada, they've legalised, and the government's now doing it.
Yeah.
Whereas 20 years ago you were a criminal, and now the government's doing it.
Mm. I read a quote from your book just on this issue. I believe that marijuana and hashish were far less evil than alcohol, that the detrimental ramifications on society were far fewer, and also that the people involved in the industry, on a whole, were more socially conscious. Those I knew were non-violent people. Just because Big Brother had deemed these drugs illegal did not make them immoral in my mind. You really believe that, or is that just you justifying what you were doing?
Well, I get it. Perhaps it's my justification to me, but I believe it.
And that's your moral compass, and you're comfortable with that?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I am. And I did what I did, and there's been people that have said, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Well, no, not really. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not sitting here in judgment. I see in your book that you make that point that you made before, that these crimes, what you were doing there, is now legal in 2 of the countries.
Yeah, and sure. And it's like, oh, you're money laundering. Yeah, well, all right, that's just a name you made up.
Yeah.
30 years ago, you just made that up. Now, money laundering. Oh, that sounds terrible, and one thing another. If you wanted me to pay tax, I would have paid the tax.
It's a different way of looking at it.
The only reason people don't declare it is because you're admitting to the offence. Whereas if you could just turn around and say, that's what I did. I bet you the tax man, if you put on the tax man, hash smuggler, and paid them, 20, 30 million pound in tax, they'd say, thank you.
Yeah. So your role within this, and you said like overseeing it and the transportation of the drugs or the money, you were taking large amounts of cash to different countries. Is that how your role?
Well, in Canada, there was lots of people, because the Canadian people were the people that were paying for it. Mm. So they would pay the money for the shipments that they'd had already received, and then I would have to get that money back to the people that needed to be paid.
Yeah.
And they would either come to Canada, and we had a process where I would meet them, and so casual, you wouldn't believe how casual. I mean, I would in the middle of the snow, I would get a little trolley with 2 or 3 million, and just march down the street, and just meet someone with a couple of boxes, and there you go. You have a good day. Thank you very much. And I can tell you, if you drop $1 million, 2 million off to someone, no one wants. You're a good bloke to all of them. I can assure you. And I know that's there'll be people thinking whatever they're thinking, but nobody hates the bloke that drops $1 million off to them. No one.
Yeah. Well, it's I can understand that. There was a couple of I think in your book you said that you first up when you started doing it, before people knew you or you had the contact, you'd have half a note and you would take that like a $1 note and take that half and meet up with the person that had the other half, so you knew you were giving the money to the right person.
That's it. Yeah, that was the receipt. Yeah.
So were you it's one thing in the environment that you knew, Sydney, you're a cop there, you knew the cross. Were you worried travelling in different jurisdictions, like around the world? Like, was there any countries that you went to that you thought, geez, I don't want to get locked up here?
Oh, don't want to get locked up in Afghanistan, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Oh, no, mate. It's because the Taliban had they'd just taken Kabul when I was there.
Yeah.
And I had to drop a couple of million off to some people over there, and oh yeah, you don't want to get caught over there.
And you would have stood out there.
Well, I would have, and that's what they said, because I've never been well tanned.
Yeah.
And so the boys said to me, "Oh, you better put this fake tan stuff on." Well, I tell you, I looked like I had hepatitis or something. I was yelling out. I had to dye my hair, and I couldn't. After I've been and seen this bloke, I mean, he must have looked at me and thought, "This bloke's a freak. Look at him. He's jaundiced." It took me ages to get it, scrub it off my face, and get the colour out of it, because over there, everyone has the same complexion, and everyone has dark hair. There's no blondes over in Afghanistan or Pakistan.
Yeah, so a blonde, fair hair, travelling in Afghanistan, carrying large amounts of cash. It's
well, you wouldn't know that I had the cash.
Yeah,
you wouldn't know that I had the cash. No.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I see they've the day it was released. That was the day they stopped production of the $1,000 notes, because $1,000 note, it doesn't $1 million will fit in the shoebox.
Yeah. Living that lifestyle, Charlie, did you stop and reflect and think, how did I get to this point?
Well, if I'm totally honest, I thought this has got to be the best job in the world.
Really? So it was the bright lights and that attracted you?
No, I'd seen plenty of bright lights and one thing and another, but the international travel, we didn't. There's no show offs. There's no show offs in this company I was working for. There was no show offs. It wasn't bright lights. It wasn't this. It was just being smart and being low key and getting the job done. But the wonderful people you meet, from all over the world that are involved, something like the production of hash, or anything else, I'd imagine. It starts off with, the people that are growing the product, and then cultivating it, and then the whole processing package, and then the shipping of it, and one thing or another. I mean, it's a worldwide enterprise, and when you're there and you're a representative on an international scale in a business like that, you meet some wonderful people in different countries and different cultures.
Did you have an end game in your own mind? Did you say, I'm going to make 10 million and get out of this game, or were you driven by the adrenaline of it, the excitement of it?
There's certainly an adrenaline rush and excitement, but you have to keep your mind focused on the job, because, well, this is sort of pre-terrorism.
Yeah.
But because you wouldn't be able to do it the way it was done then, you wouldn't be able to do it now the way it was done back then.
Yeah.
But still, there was, there's security, and there's this, and there's lots of money that you're going to cost someone if you're not paying attention, and you're not, so you're not going out getting smashed and being an idiot.
Yeah.
You've got to keep your wits about you. But yeah, just the cultural aspect of the different countries, and you have a respect as being the person that's on your own. It's not like you're wandering around with half a dozen goons and you're all tooled up.
Yeah.
There's just me in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt.
So it sounds to me like, listening to you, part of it was the challenge, that you wanted to do a good job, which is, it seems to come across that you think, okay, well, this is my job, I'm going to do it well. Yeah, well,
I think staying focused was the main aspect, but then I think I made the mistake of I'd forgotten what I knew, the knowledge that I knew, because with regards to telephone intercepts and surveillance and things like that, because I thought, well, no one knows me. There was an ignorance in my part there was clues that this was off.
Yeah,
and I missed them.
Yeah,
because I thought, no, they've got nothing to do with this. Why would But then you never know. I guess that's the advantage police forces have all around the world.
Yeah, you don't know who or when they're looking at you. The $23 million that you had, and I read in your book you had to count it twice. That would be a long task. Not that you're complaining; you're getting paid good money, but yeah,
had a counting machine,
yeah,
and it's just brr, brr, that sound that it goes through and goes through and goes through, and stack it up here, and stack it up there, and stack it up here, and it was 200 odd thousand over.
Right.
And when the boys rang and said, "Is the money right?" And I said, "No." And they went, "Oh, they thought they'd been robbed." Well, not robbed, but they'd been shortchanged. And I said, "No, it's over." I said, "I thought that was a test." And they said, Charlie, you've got 25 million of our money, and you're in a foreign country. That's the test."
Yeah, yeah.
So they were quite pleased that I just said, it's a bit over.
So how long were you operating like this for before you got caught?
Probably 4 or 5 months.
Right. And were you based anywhere, or you virtually just travelling?
Well, I went from Amsterdam to Montreal.
Yeah.
And then from Montreal, because that's where the product was going in.
Yeah.
And then there was some people had to be paid in Asia. I had to go to Istanbul and then to Islamabad, and so it was a bit of jet setting around. Went to Hong Kong. I nearly gave some bloke 500,000 for nothing in Hong Kong.
Talk us through that.
Oh well, I had to meet a bloke at in a hotel on Nathan Road. And they said he'd be sitting in front of the piano. I said, "I know where the piano is. I've been there the Holiday Inn. I know where the piano is."
Yeah.
And said, "Well, I've gone in there. I've got this little bag, and it's got $500,000 in it." And I see this bloke stand there, and this bloke gives me a wink. And I thought, "Oh yeah." So I walked up and sat next to him and said, "G'day, mate. How are you?" And he said, "Good. How are you?" So would you like a drink? I said, "Yeah, mate. I'll have a vodka and tonic." And I said, "Have you got something for me?" Meaning the receipt.
Yeah, yeah.
And he said, and he put his hand on my leg. And he said, "Oh yes, I've definitely got something for you." And out of my peripheral vision, I could see they put another bloody piano there.
Right.
There was this little Asian bloke sitting there, looking all stressed and one thing another. And I'm going, "Oh my God." I said, "Sorry, mate, you've missed out here." No, ta-da, see you later.
Had to resist that one. So that's like traveling. Were you traveling? You had your own passport. Were you, or did you have fake passports? Or
no, I had my own passport.
Yeah,
they'd given me a couple of other passports, but
yeah,
I thought that would just, if you get caught with a false passport, you're in trouble straight away.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas if you've got your passport, it's there. You know all the answers to everything. You know this and you know that.
Yeah.
And the only reason you need a false passport is if you're going to get caught.
So talking about getting caught, like travelling around with that, if you got caught in certain countries, you're pretty well stuffed. Did you weigh that up?
Well, the stakes were high, but to be fair, if you got caught and you've only got the money, they're going to take the money.
Yeah.
Like money laundering wasn't really around then.
Yes.
They'd just take the money off you for not declaring it.
Yeah, yeah.
So that would have, as they say, shit happens. That would have just been, the money's gone.
Yeah.
And it's not, it wouldn't be a secret. It wasn't like, you just didn't turn up with the money. It'd be there, and you'd spend, a period of time, being locked up before you could get out, sort of thing. But it wouldn't be a sentence or anything. It'd only be a couple of days.
Okay.
Well, you just, it was pretty secure. There wasn't the mechanisms in place that are in place nowadays. So it was pretty, even if you had it strapped to your body. I mean, when did you ever get patted down?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you didn't very rarely up until terrorists have become the
until 9/11. None of that was happening.
Yeah. So that was the part that the old heart would be beating a little bit harder when you're going through customs. Is that was the risk locations?
Yeah. There are if you don't take eye contact with anyone,
Yeah.
and you just go through, it's not really that difficult a task to go through customs without being detected.
Right.
The ones you see on that what's that Australian show, that Border Security.
Yeah.
You scratch your head and think, why were you doing that? You're just a dummy. You are just a dummy. You may as well have had a neon sign on your head saying, I'm in my belly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So your demise, talk us through that, how that came about.
My demise, God, if you speak to my mother, God rest her soul, if you spoke to her, she'd tell you my demise started the day I joined the New South Wales Police Force.
Yeah.
And she said that all the way through. Well, there was a couple of demises, really, and it's just for making the wrong decisions, really. Yeah. It was the wrong decision way back in that was my demise started when I didn't book that Scotch up. Life changed from then. I'd be retiring as a chief superintendent of police now had I booked that Scotch up. Yeah. In all probability.
You mentioned your mum, and I've got a quote here again from your book. But my mother said the New South Wales Police changed me, and for the worst. I say the New South Wales Police educated me. It taught me loyalty and certainly lowered my moral code with regard to the law. It taught me that respect is not given in life but is earned. It taught me that we're all fucked up at some stage, some just fucked up bigger than others. And you will find out how good a bloke you really are when you see who is there for you when you have. That's a quote from your book. It sounds like it's a tale of your life in that quote.
Yeah, well, I've got. Only yesterday I was talking to two blokes. It was their birthday on the same day, and we went to school at Patrician Brothers Fairfield. So 50 years ago. Mm. And all the way through my life, I don't have the ones, who did we go to school with? I can tell you, the names of 10 guys that I went to school with when I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
And we all keep in touch throughout the years, no matter where we are in the world. Mm. And I don't think I haven't had a friend that was a friend and isn't still a friend.
Yeah.
And there's not many people can say that. People have their, this one did the wrong thing, that one did the wrong thing. Yeah. But
old friends are good in that they keep you balanced. You can't bullshit to old friends because they know you as well as you know yourself. So it says a lot if you've got friends from your childhood. So must be doing something right.
They do say that I amaze them all the time, when my head pops up here and does this and does that. But
what's Charlie done this time?
Yeah, they've led much more sheltered lives.
Yeah. So when you were arrested over in Canada, talk us through that.
Well, I went to meet these guys. They had supposedly just dropped arrived, sailed across the Pacific Ocean, and I met them at the Intercontinental Hotel in Montreal, and I thought that was strange meeting them there because it was the fanciest hotel in Montreal, and not the low key place that I was used to meeting people at. And when I got there was a couple of guys there, and I went, "This is not right. Why do they need extra people here?" And anyway, we went in and. They were all drinking beers around and talking about this and that and one thing and another. And I looked at these blokes and none of them had a tan. And I thought, there's something wrong here. What's going on? How come you can't have been on a boat for 22 days, no matter where you are, and not have a tan? You can't hide under, And then their behaviour, I thought, these blokes are all police. I know how police behave. And they get on the drink and they start talking and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh no, they're coppers. And so I sort of played into the fact that, all right, they're coppers. Well, why haven't they arrested me? There needs to be something that, they want something from me. I said, listen, I've got a couple of million back in my room. I've got to pay you blokes for the trip. Do you want? Oh, can you go and get it now? I said, no, I can't get it now. I said, but I can drop it off to you in the morning. And he said, give me your number. And I'd already given him this guy, because I'd met this guy once before.
Right.
And it turns out he was an American DEA commander. And I said, I've given you my number. And we had a process where we'd flip the numbers. And anyway, the number I gave him, he said, no, I rang that number. He said, and some Chinese girl answered the phone. And I went, well, no, that's. Oh, I said, yeah, here's the number. So I gave it to him again. And when I'd land somewhere, I would rent a mobile phone. It wasn't like today. You know, back you'd get something, you'd have a little satchel on you could put on your belt, and you'd put the phone in your belt.
Yep.
And so I'd rented one from a store in Montreal, you know, for tourists, and it had a Dymo number down the side with the phone number on it. Because you can never remember the number.
Yeah.
But it had the real number on it, which wasn't the number I gave him, because he had to flip it.
Yeah.
Well, as it turns out, when I got out, and I said, look, I'll drop you off a couple of million tomorrow. Knowing, you know, and I thought, well, they're police. There's no policeman in the world that's going to arrest you if you tell him you're going to give him $2 million tomorrow. No one.
Yeah.
And so I got out, and Montreal has a subterranean city aspect to it. You know, you can, if you go down underground, you know, you'd be gone for a week and no one would find you.
Yeah.
Railways are underlined. You know, there's an underground city as well as the above ground. So I'm underground, and I'm shot up and came up. And then I rang the number that I gave him, and this Chinese lady answered. I said, well, that's it. He doesn't know how to flip the numbers. So I rang them.
Yeah.
So I rang the boys and said, mate, these blokes are coppers. They said, no, Charlie, no, they're not. The only copper there is you. I said, mate, I'm telling you, I know police. These blokes are coppers. And he said, oh, well, mate, if you want to go, you can go. And I said, no, well, I'm here. I'll stay now. But I said, I'm not going back to see these blokes. But unbeknownst to me, in a pot plant in that room, there was a video recorder.
Right.
And I'd walked past it, and they got the number that was on the Dymo.
Right. Okay.
So then they put that phone off.
Yep.
And of course, then they tracked me down to the hotel that I was at. And crash, bang, boom. The next night, that was it. Then they came. And the rest is history. That was it.
How did you feel?
I was wondering how this had all happened, you know, because it's, you know, I was sure that I hadn't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
And then you wonder who did do something wrong. Mind you, when I say wrong, you know, we were all doing something wrong, but you know, who didn't abide by the rules. And it turns out, once again, there was an informant. Some American guy had been arrested the year before, and it was when they brought in 3 strikes and you're out.
Yeah.
He said, no. It was a petty little thing, but it was still a felony. So it was his 3rd strike. And you got life if you got 3 strikes and you were out in America.
Yeah.
And but in reality, he would have probably got, if he was found guilty, he would have got 6 months or something like that. And he said, I'll give you the world's biggest hash organisation. And of course, they jumped at that, and they went on a holiday for the next 12 months.
Right. Tracking you guys.
Tracking and infiltrated everyone. And he had carte blanche to all the aspects of it. And but you know, it's still, and they're in these task forces and squads, you know, they're in no rush. I mean, it's a holiday for them at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with their country. Nothing was ever going to America.
Mm.
But you know, it gives them the right, as was the previous case with my friend, where the Americans had come over to Australia.
You understand the police culture, and the trip overseas is it's not going to be rushed.
No. They're doubling their wages, staying in nice hotels, you know, playing up, doing this, doing that. No. So I get that, and that's where, you know, you become a victim of the system that was in place.
Now, you had concerns when you were locked up that you were going to get extradited to America.
They were. Well, of course, when they arrested me, they took me back to RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Headquarters.
Yeah.
And sat me down, and he said, Charlie, he said, I've got the good news and the bad news. He said, the good news is you can walk out the door right now. He said, and the bad news is you can spend the rest of your life in an American prison. He said, and for the good news, you've got to put a name on every one of these faces and tell us where they are.
Right.
And he said, and that's your only chance of not being extradited to America. And I said, see you later, boys. Take me to the cell. So they took me to the cell, and then I mean, I knew what I was. I'd read up on everything. I wasn't going to get involved in anything that I wanted to know the worst case scenario if something went wrong. And so the Geneva Convention kicks in, and if you plead guilty to something in one country, you can't be extradited for the same offence to another country.
Yeah.
So and the only reason I got involved in what I was doing is because Canada was so liberal with their regards to non-violent crime, that the maximum as a first-time offender with no violence is you only do 1/3.
Right.
Well, it was going to be 10 to 15 years was the parity of what I would have got. So I thought, well, 1/3, and then 1/6 you're allowed out on day parole. So I thought, if I got the worst sentence, I'll be doing 2 years, and I'll be on day parole.
Right.
And I didn't have a problem with what I was doing, and for the returns, it was a management decision, and I made that decision, and so that was it. And so by pleading guilty there, then they had to drop the extradition. I was going to be intimidated. Once again, it's the police, and they're intimidating you that if you do this, this is what will happen to you, and if you don't, this is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Well, if you're naive enough to fall for that, then you're gonna cop the result of it, aren't you?
So you ended up pleading guilty to it?
I pleaded guilty at the first opportunity, and they gave me 10 years.
Okay. And how was your experience in prison over there?
Well, it sort of didn't start off all that well.
Talk us through that.
Well, we were in a remand centre for I guess probably 2 months.
Yep.
But then once I pleaded guilty, they send you to a classification prison, and so me and my co-accused that were caught with me over there, we both pleaded guilty, and we were sent to the classification prison. And anyway, the first day there, we started walking around the yard, and you're just waiting there, and they have psychologists and whatever come and talk to you, and send you through where's your family and the whole business and one thing and another, and then they categorise you, A, B or C, bit similar to Australia, where else in the world. We were walking around the yard, and I could see a gathering of guys near the entrance back into the block, and I said, something's wrong, to my co-accused, and he said, what are you talking about? I said, those blokes there, they're pointing at me, they're pointing at us, and he said, what's the matter? I said, I don't know, they're reading a newspaper. And as we wandered past them, as we were doing our laps of the quadrangle, I heard one of them say, that's him. And they had a newspaper, and I thought, oh, shit, there's something in the newspaper about us. And he said, oh, I bet they're saying that you're a policeman. I bet it says you're a policeman, because we didn't know. And it was in a French newspaper, La Gazette. And I said, well, you go inside. He said, no, I'll stay with you. I said, no, mate, you go inside, because it'll be me. It'll be focused on. Anyway, the siren went for everyone to go back in the cell block, and I could see these guys, and they were waiting there, and I could see the guy that I thought was the head honcho. Yeah. Picked up a rock and put it in my fist, and I thought, oh, well, we'll give him one on the way out. And when someone hit me from behind, bang, and they jumped on me. There's 6, 7 of them. They jumped on me. Yeah. You ever see a cartoon skit where everyone jumps on top and they're all punching each other, and you crawl out underneath? Turned out to be a truism in life, and it was. They
wanted to get at you too much.
Yeah,
fight the preliminaries. Yeah,
and then the bloke in the tower fired a couple of shots, and of course they all shit themselves when they hear the gunfire. And anyway, we went inside, and I had a couple of bruises and a couple of little scratches.
Do you think you were flogged because you were an ex-cop? Do you think that's what it was about?
That's what it had. It had a La Gazette,
right.
And I'd been promoted to detective. It says Australian detective arrested.
Congratulations.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and so And the warden comes down and says, "Oh, you must not be here. You have to go into segregation and this and that and the other." And I said, "No, no, no." And he said, "Here, you have to sign this because we're going to charge that guy, the instigator." And I said, "No, no, I'm not signing anything.
Yeah.
And I'm not going into segregation." And he said, "But you have to," in his very French drawl that was coming out. And anyway, that was I wouldn't let them put me in segregation. Then there was an old bloke there who looked a bit like Danny DeVito with grey hair. This old bloke, he said, "He's no problem here, this bloke." And I thought, "Who's this bloke?" His name was Frank Catronian. He was the godfather.
Right.
He was the mafia don of Montreal from the American mafia.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known him from Adam. But he saw the way I wouldn't give the bloke up. And he said, "He was all right, this guy, little Italian, portly Italian bloke."
Yeah.
And I went, "Yeah, whatever." And he got us a job in the laundry. And he came over and he says, "You have no problem here. You have no problem here. I take care of it. I take care of it. You're a good man." And I went, I'm thinking he's a pedophile or something like that, or he just wanted me as his little boy.
Yeah.
And him and his son had just been arrested once again by the American DEA. And they got 7 years, and we ended up at the same prison. And he sort of took me under his wing and said, "You have no problem here, son. You have no problem here."
That was lucky.
But he was a good old bloke. God rest his soul. He's dead now. But and then everything was fine for the next 2.5 years, I guess. And then I had my lawyer smuggle me in $1,000.
Yeah.
On a legal visit. And anyway, I got caught. Another informant had given me up. He'd overheard that I was going to give the bloke the $1,000. And because I'd caused them so much grief, because I read the Corrections Conditional Release Act and the Charter of Rights in Canada.
There you go, being a pain in the ass again, Charlie.
There I go, being a pain.
I can imagine.
Absolute pain in the ass. But I mean, it's all well and good. Like, the law is the law, and if the law says this, and I mean, I don't agree with lots of things that are in the law, but if you do it, that's what happens to you.
Yeah, fair call.
It's a really simple thing. The Crimes Act, no matter what country you're in, if you do that, you get that. You might get less, but that's the maximum you can get. But that's what you get, right? So if you're not up for it, don't do it. But when you go to prison, there's a rule book that says what you're entitled to. Well, the only person that doesn't abide by that is the corrections officers, because the answer to every question you ask in prison is no.
Yeah.
And they made a mistake and gave me a typewriter. Well, let me tell you, they found out after that. So, and I did give them some grief. I really did. And because, the law was the law. And they weren't abiding by it. And I said, well, you know what? You are with me. And for anyone that needs a helping hand. So I did that. So when I got caught,
when you caught $1,000, yeah.
Right.
Payback time.
Big time. So they locked me up for 67 days in the hole. And no light, no nothing. They keep the lights on all night, 67 days.
So, tell me what that does to you.
Well, once again, the law kicks in. And because there was a technicality there that it was administrative segregation because you hadn't been convicted of anything, you were still entitled to some things. And, of course, that had never happened. If you're in the hole, you never got anything. Well, the law actually said that you were entitled to a couple of little things. So, of course, they hated me even more than that. So then they charged me criminally. And normally they would just put the money in your account. Yeah. Right? But with me, they said that I was using it to escape. And I said, if it only cost $1,000, I would have done that 3 years ago. Right? Be sure about that. Anyway, they weren't having any of that. So they said they charged me. And in order for the young female lawyer that brought the $1,000 I pleaded guilty and said that she didn't know about it. Yeah. And because she would have been disbarred had they have found out that she had done that. And so I pleaded guilty. They gave me 15 days extra on my sentence, which they thought would make me a second-time offender, so I wouldn't be allowed to get my first offence with non-violence to do 1/3. It would automatically mean I'd have another 3 years to do, plus 15 days. And then they sent me to Donnacona, like the super maximum over there, where everyone there is doing life without parole. Yeah. And there's me, who has 6 months left to go.
And that was their way of getting back at you for being a smart ass or a stickler for the rules.
Yeah,
To
and they have a job to do, and
yeah,
so it's like cricket. When you're caught, you're out. And,
yeah,
well, they wanted me out, and so anyway, I get there and in the prison van. It took 2 days to get there in a prison van, minus 30 degrees,
yeah,
and I got up there and I got to reception, and one of the bikers from the rock machine comes over to me and says, "Mr. Charlie, you cannot come in here." And I said, "That's great. If you can just tell that bloke over there, I'll be on my way." And he said, "No, that's not happening." He said, "You can't come in here. Somebody's going to kill you to watch Channel 4. Everybody know you're a policeman." And I said, "Well, mate, I ain't got a choice." I said, "But you blokes all want to become banditos, don't you?" Because the rock machine was in a play with the Hells Angels over there, and there was a biker war going on.
yeah.
He said, "What's that got to do with you?" And I said, a bit of ad lib, I said, "I'm a full patch member of the Banditos." And he said, "It's impossible. It's impossible. You're a policeman." I said, "Ring this number." And there was only one number I ever remembered in my whole life, other than my personal number, was a guy by the name of Felix Lyle. And he was president of the Banditos at the time.
Yeah, I know Felix.
And Felix said, I'd given Felix every job he'd had for the decade before, except for being a biker. I didn't even know he was a biker until someone wrote me a letter and told me that he was.
You were giving him jobs when you were working the doors at.
Yeah. I took him. I went from there, and then I went to another club, and then he became the doorman there. And our kids used to do boxing together when they were, and karate when they were 7 and 8 before I was divorced. And I'd known him, God, 25 years, I guess. In a work sort of situation. But Felix was never on time, and I'd have to ring, "Where are you? Where are you? Where are you?"
Hence remembering the number.
And I said, "Ring this number." And he said, "But you can't come in here to the population." I said, "Sweet, come and see me tomorrow. Get someone to ring him tonight." Anyway, they came back the next day. He said, "Unbelievable. You can share the cell with me, Charlie. You're a bandito." and that was it. And of course, I think the prison service, they were really upset that I hadn't been knocked in there. They were really annoyed that because it was a death sentence sending me there. It was 6 months to go into a situation like that.
Yeah.
And they just scratched their heads. Anyway, so you had to do a minimum 6 months there. So I did my 6 months there.
So just before we move on to there, so Felix obviously vouched for you when he got the call?
Oh, yeah. And I got to hear the phone conversation.
Yeah.
Because at my parole hearing 6 months later, and it should have been straightforward. You just walk in and they say, "Yes, you're going home." And my dad, he said, and there's two lawyers and a magistrate on the parole board. And they said, "Well, yours isn't straightforward." And I went, like, shocked, God, what are you doing to me? And they said, "Well, you don't get parole if you're a biker." I said, "What are you talking about? I'm not a biker." And they said, "Well, have a listen to this." And I said, "What?" So they played the phone call of Felix telling them that I was his brother and we were this and we were that. And I said, no, let me tell you. So I sat them down for half an hour and told them the whole story as I've just related to you now. And they said, "It just has to be true. No one could make that up." And anyway, they granted me my parole. And that was it. And I hadn't seen Felix for probably 5 years. I hadn't seen him, but he didn't forget. He turned out to be a bit of a scallywag, they tell me.
Yeah, well, I actually locked someone up for attempting to kill him. They shot the wrong person, and then he went across to the Hells Angels. So yeah, he's got a bit of a reputation, scallywag, as you might say. But he was lucky. Someone, a contract killer, tried to do a hit on him, and shot the wrong person who also had a ponytail at the time. So. Yeah, I that's where I'd know his name from and that. So, yeah.
Right. There you go. Well,
you get released from prison in Canada. I would imagine you get deported from Canada straight away.
Yeah, I get deported to Ireland because I actually have an Irish passport through my parents and one another. And I was coming back to Australia, and I thought, you know what, it's time to start a new life. And so I turned up here in London, and I was staying with an aunt of mine, and I wandered into. I just went down the road because I was born in Fulham in a taxi on the Fulham Palace Road. I wandered down to the local pub, the Ifield, And I walked in there and walked up to the bar and ordered a pint, and I got a tap on the shoulder. And turned around, there was Howard Marks, who's called Mr. Nice. Well, that's what he's called in the world. He died years ago. He was a good friend. But I didn't know him, and he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Hello, Charlie, how are you?"
How do you know you?
That's what I said. Like, how do you know me? I said, "I know who you are, but, how would you know me?" He said, "Charlie, 25 tonnes. There aren't many."
Your reputation precedes you.
He said, "Come and sit down and have a drink." And so I walked over and sat down at the table. This is my first day out. And there was Freddie Foreman, who's sort of like known as the godfather around London.
Yeah.
And Tabitha Ritchie, who's Guy Ritchie's sister. And then we sat down, and Freddie offered me a job, and Howard offered me a job, and Tabitha, she just took me home.
Is that hence a connection with, because I see in your book a double date with Madonna. Is that where that started? Yeah, tell us about that one.
Guy, Tabitha's brother, had just married Madonna. Yeah, and she was opening up a business in Earl's Court, a gym. And and so then, of course, and then Guy bought the Punch Bowl Hotel, which was Freddie Foreman's son's hotel.
Yeah.
So we'd have our Tuesday night get-togethers there, and Madonna she'd fly over some Irish musicians, and we'd play the Spoons all night with Vinnie Jones and Jason Statham, and it was quite a fun couple of years, actually.
Charlie, if your life didn't exist, you would have to invent it. It's some amazing stories. Some amazing stories. Are you lucky? What do you put it down to? Is it luck? Is it who you are? Is it the way you treat people? Like you've survived some pretty dicey situations.
Well, I think it's just about being black and white. My life's black and white. It's there. There's a lot of people. A lot of people in different classes of society that know me, and I think you have a respect, for better or worse. But people know you, and there's a worldliness. I see people that they start off as doing a job at 16 years of age, and they're 65 and they retire and they didn't do another job, and they didn't go anywhere, and they didn't do anything, and they didn't mix in different classes of society or different cultures in the world. I can go anywhere and hold conversations with anyone with regards to, not that I know more than anyone else, but I know what they're talking about.
Yeah, an interest to explore the world and all the facets of it.
It gives, if you mix cultures and mix different classes in society, and if you're a trusted person, you have something to bring to the table, because it's an introduction for another person to understand different aspects of life.
If you're back at the kid that walked into the police academy, or take it even further, when you went into the Commonwealth Bank, what do you wish you knew then that you know now?
How much money bankers make.
You should have stayed in the bank.
Should have stayed. I have two friends that are still in the Commonwealth Bank, and they constantly ring me and tell me that they live their lives through me. But at the end of the day, well, they've certainly got a good retirement fund. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that you call it a regret that you've had in life. What would I like to know? That money doesn't matter. Money
comes and goes.
Doesn't matter at all. It doesn't. Yeah. And I've had millions, and I've been penniless.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make a difference. And too many people think that it does make a difference.
Yeah. With your experience in the cops, and we've talked about how it changed you. Your mum certainly thinks it changed you for the worst. Would you recommend that as a career to people?
Not now. No way. Not a chance in the world.
Because of your experiences, or because of the way?
No, just because of the way society's changed. I mean, I saw the other day on the news here in London, 28 policemen in riot gear and, the mock-up sort of riot gear that they wear and one thing another now. And they turned a block of flats where four blokes, it was to do with this COVID thing and one thing another, and four blokes came down and started throwing some cans at them and one thing another, and they all ran away. They all ran away. You know, they've got 23,000 reserves, and they all ran away.
Yeah, strange.
No, not for me. And it's become with the autonomy now. You know, each district is, oh, let's make money doing this. Let's make money doing this. Let's make money. It's all about money, money, money. You know, and no, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone to join the police force.
Okay. Again, a quote from your book, and this is you reflecting on things that have happened. But if I could read that out and invite a comment from that. My biggest fuck up has nothing to do with importation of 25 tonnes of hashish. It said I was not there for my two sons through their teenage years. That is surely the crime that I still pay for this day. Sorry doesn't cut it. Now that I have 4 grandchildren, I hope I get a chance to be a teacher again. Is that when you look back in your quiet moments? Is that's your regret? The time that you missed with your kids?
Yeah, it really is. Two great sons, and there's an estrangement that years of being apart creates, and I just hope to get a chance to get that back now with the grandchildren at some stage in the near future.
Yeah. Well, Charlie, it's been fascinating talking with you today. I appreciate your honesty and rawness in the way you've told your story. No one could ever accuse you of not living a full life. Thanks so much for coming on I Catch Killers. While you're here, I'd just like to say I respect people who are true to themselves, and I found that in you. So, and I mean that. I'm not sitting here in judgment of you. You're true to yourself. You are what you are. There's nothing superficial about you. You're loyal to your mates, sometimes at your own detriment. I don't think that's a bad thing. And I also like the fact you don't make excuses for who you are. You're not perfect, but who is. Good luck. Keep your head down and stay lucky.
Cheers, Gary. Thanks very much. You take care.
I hope you have enjoyed the diverse range of guests who have appeared on Season 3 of I Catch Killers. We'll be back soon with more fascinating guests who provide an insight into the world of crime from all perspectives. We guarantee it will be raw and honest. Speak to you soon.